This episode is brought to you by MEXC Crypto Trading Platform. With the wild swings we're experiencing in these crypto markets, why not take advantage of the wide range of cryptos to actually trade on MEXC? Find your next moonshot and never miss another crypto gem again. And use the link below and I'll airdrop you $25 worth of Bitcoin. Visit MEXC.com for more information. Link in the description below.
This my two Satoshis, who need 2 cents when they can get double from stacking Toshis, yeah.
Hola, and buenos dias, G and G's, or buenos noches. I don't know what time of day you're seeing this. I am Trek with 2Ks. This is CBTV, and you're about to watch my two Satoshis. At least I hope you watch it, right? Anywho, basic idea is this, right? I cover some crypto stories, things going on in the space that I argue might not have gotten that much attention or might not have had the right framing to it, at least as I see it. And I also cover some non-crypto things. They could be related to economics, geopolitics, technology, but they catch my attention, so I throw them out there to y'all, and hopefully it's something that you might be interested in, or something that at least gets you to start asking questions about other things going on around you. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Nonetheless, I do want to say gratitudes and thank you to the folks who are tuning in, right? Because at the end of the day, we do see the numbers are going up, and we also see that there are more comments. So I appreciate the folks who are giving comments. I appreciate the folks who are giving a thumbs up. I appreciate the folks who are just lurking and not making any comments and doing no dislike or uplike. Nonetheless, I appreciate y'all. Why? Because the algos see that you're still interacting with the channel, which means that my content must be doing something that interests you. And I appreciate that you have some level of value for what I'm saying. Nonetheless, let me push on and jump into these stories, and here you have it. So this first story, all right, I'm gonna kind of preface this with, I'm not worried about what color flag you're wearing right now when I say this stuff. I'm gonna say it again. I'm not worried about whether you a red, white, and blue flag person, or if you're a yellow and blue person, or if you're the former and still are like pro number one, the latter, and just saying, screw the bear flag. Listen to what I'm saying. If you've been paying any attention to me, right, you've heard me mention stuff about being a nasty girl and how I deal with the weekend warrior stuff. So my perspective on this may not be like everyone else's, but nonetheless, I felt that I should share. Not saying that this is the number one source and everything this person is saying is absolute truth. I just happened to come across their stuff today, and literally just this one article. Yes, it is X amount of days behind as far as being dated, because this was put out at the beginning of the month, which is June, and we're already past the 10th. But it doesn't change the fact of this is not the first time I've seen this type of headline about what is going on in the U country right now. And so for those of you who might not be actually reading the screen right now, U.S. officials admit they have lied about Ukraine's success and the Russian failures. Bottom line is, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing, is that there are public statements being made, and there was one particular thing that was being made through the current administration about chemical weapons, and what was being said publicly contradicted what was being said by the local experts. And this particular article goes, let me just read the first line out of this. Told you so. The US and NATO have been lying about what is actually taking place on the ground in Ukraine. For those not familiar with my earlier writings on this actual situation, go back and look at my previous articles. You can go back and do that at your own time. The links for these are always in the description, so it is highly encouraged for you to do your own due diligence in any of the stuff that I say, because you know why? I'm not a war expert or a economist. This isn't financial advice. This isn't me telling you how to live your life. This is just me throwing out information that hopefully gets you to think and ask. There we go. Bottom line is this. There was a thing that happened where NBC News, not known as pro-Putin media outlet, published this bombshell this week. It is an attention-grabbing assertion that made headlines around the world. U.S. officials said they had indications suggesting Russia might be preparing to use chemical agents in Ukraine. I remember this, and I'm just saying, like, hashtag WMD, that was that playbook right there. But anywho, President Joe Biden later said it publicly, but 3 U.S. officials told NBC News this week there was no evidence Russia had brought any chemical weapons near Ukraine. They said that the U.S. released the information to deter Russia from using the banned munitions. The bottom line, and I know some people are like, oh, well, how do you know that's actually the real story or that's even the real news? There's a whole propaganda thing. Listen, here's one thing I do understand is that if you take enough different sources, let me get up close and saying this. If you take enough different sources of information and then you cross-reference it, and you start to notice that X amount of those different sources have the same touching points. And I'll give it to you in relation to this. If you look at what is going on with the stateside news and all of the talking points that they have in similarity versus what is going on outside of the US and those news sources and the similarities they have in comparison, they don't add up in that the US version of what is going on outside of the US doesn't add up with what the other people outside of the US is saying. That's the simple, blatant point of this whole thing. This is not the first time I heard that story. For those of you who are like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, it's okay. For those of you who understand how the outside world news works and how the inside the wall garden news works, I'm gonna just leave it there for y'all. All right, I'm gonna jump into this next one. Hey, you know what? If you don't agree with what I'm saying, the comments are always open and you can always find me on Twitter. Jumping into this next story. So basically, China rolls out stimulus measures as COVID pressures economy. Now, this is what was going on like about a month or so more ago, because they had their next round of the C-19 breakout and they had a know something policy. I can't remember the phrasing right now. The bottom line is the government was like, hey, we're gonna do our version of the Uncle Sam bucks, but we're not gonna do it as like they did in the West. Like we're doing it to control, to help stabilize. And not that the market should do any crazy pumping or anything like that, but they actually just wanted to get it to not drop too low. And it's supposed to be targeted at areas where the entire neighborhood or city was locked down. Now, excuse me, there's a point that they make in this article that also throws me, where they say stuff like this. I've never read the Straits Times before, but I happen to come across this. Economists are cautious about whether the measures will provide material to growth. So they're talking about like GDP production and stuff like that. But what gets me is they're not giving names. Like, what economist went on public record and said this? And was it a Chinese economist, or was it some economist who's sitting luxury up in Europe somewhere or in the States somewhere? Those are the things that, like, when you read stories, you gotta read between the lines and the words and like how they're using these words. Another example is many economists expect the government won't meet its annual GDP growth target of about 5.5% per year. Again, who are these economists? Are they the economists that work for the Chinese government? Are they the economists that work for the law firms and the accounting firms and the think tanks that are in China? Are they the ones that work for the European ones? Are they the ones that are here in the States? You don't know. Now, the reason why I brought this story up is in part to show that, one, America was not the only country doing the whole Stimi check thing. That's one. I am curious though to see how this plays out with what's going on in their bigger geopolitical moves. And you got to understand that X amount of manufacturing on the global scale comes out of China because they have enough of the plants for it. But when you shut down enough neighborhoods and you shut down an entire city of a couple million people, the plants aren't working, they're not producing anything. How is their recovery going to look compared to how our recovery looked? Because we were definitely on the delay for giving out the money, and that was a whole nother thing on how that played out. But things like that is how I'm wondering. This story is definitely dated and will be even more dated by the time you see it, but it is something to note. We're not the only ones doing it. And what do they say? Like when the East gets a cold, the States get the flu or something like that. The point being is we're going to see this ripple effect come over this. It will ripple out into our economy because at the end of the day, X amount of the stuff that we import comes out of China. And so time will tell. Just something to throw on your radar. That's all that I'm saying on that. All right, so my last story on this is about Gemini and Paxos. Basic line is this. In light of the Terra Luna disaster, New York Department of Financial Services has set new reserves and redemption guidelines for dollar-pegged stablecoins. Basically saying, hey, we can't have y'all doing that same dumb shit that Terra just did. Algorithmic, whatever, nah, dog. We gotta have some real world stuff that we can touch and then we can actually like somehow verify through traditional markets and systems that it's there, which is funny because like on the code side of it, it's like, well, code is there and the code is supposed to function. But if you write codes accounts for another code, hey, like the code did what it was supposed to do. Anywho, let's jump into this right here. So the guidelines currently apply to Paxos Trust Company, that's USPD, and Binance, which is BUSD, and Gemini's issued GUSD. And then another one called ZUSD issued by Gmozy. I don't know who that one is, honestly. This kind of makes me wonder, will this level of restriction or of a compliance, because the compliance bill just jumped straight the hell up, not to mention Gemini, and this is a dated article, Gemini just said that they're letting people go. So they're downsizing on their overhead. They have to do this new level of compliance stuff. And now they have to look at how they're going to hold the reserves and then comply with like proving that they're doing the stuff. That's a new budget, right? Not a new budget, but that is expanding part of your budget right there for business operation. That's for certain. Paxos, I don't mess with stable coins like that. And I definitely don't do stuff with these particular exchanges. So it's going to be interesting to see like how they try to work out pushing the expense of these new upgrades of compliance fees and operation costs to the end user. That's where it always ends up. Regulatory people come in, oh, the source product now costs more for us to do, we got to push it down to the end user. That's what's going to happen, which arguably means that they should be pushing out, if they haven't already pushed it out, they should be pushing out a new terms of service agreement soon enough, if that hasn't already come out. Also, let me jump into this last part right here that talks about some of the guideline things. Under the new guidelines, stablecoins must be 100% backed by reserves at the end of every business day. However, which is ironic, right? Because traditional banks don't have to have a reserve stuff in their holdings now. Like they don't have to back up what they've been lending out and pushing around in the system. So that's wild to me on this angle. However, the approved list of assets that can be used as reserves is limited to US Treasury bills, repo agreements fully collateralized by Treasury bills, notes or bonds, government money market funds, and cash deposits. Which, what do we mean in cash deposits in this sense? Are we actually talking about like greenbacks? Are we talking about what the digital money looks like on the screen versus what's sitting in a physical room somewhere? I'm curious about that particular thing as far as like cash deposits, because you make the deposit to your bank, but your bank doesn't keep the funds, but they tell you that you made the, like when you cash your check, or if you go in and, hey, let me put $5,000 in here, it isn't that they hold the money there. So what does that mean? So those are the things that I wonder right now. There's another thing too that I question about the FDIC thing, but I'm not going to beat or jump down into that rabbit hole. The point of this all, G&Gs, is that New York is making some moves to tighten the noose on businesses that are blockchain crypto related, especially within the financial sector. And yeah, it definitely seems like there's a number of legal things happening in the New York area in comparison to other cities, other states, and other countries. New York has always been like a state that does its own thing for real. Nonetheless, the link for that will be in the description on this. You can definitely deep dive on that as you want to. It is highly encouraged that you double check, triple check any of the stuff that you hear me talk about on here. Why? Because this ain't financial advice and I'm just some guy on the internet, right? But nonetheless, this is my 2 Satoshis, and I do hope that you enjoyed or learned something from any of the things that I just said on this. And if not, like, how about come back for the next episode and hopefully that will work out for you better. Maybe not. I can't guarantee. Nonetheless, let me leave it off on this. So as we've been talking about, we're doing these Oculus giveaways. We also got a couple tickets for the Blockchain Futurist Conference, which is in August. That will be in Toronto, Canada. So if you don't got a passport, I'm sorry, but you can't get this ticket. Also, if you're not on the, the membership side of the CBTV channel, then yeah, I'm sorry. This is for those folks who actually went the extra step. But nonetheless, it's an opportunity of either the free ticket, but if you don't have that membership, you can also use my referral code, which is TREKK, the number 50, and that will give you 50% off on the Blockchain Futurist Conference ticket. So you have a chance either way. One just might be a little bit more than the other. Other than that, G&Gs, I'm closing it out to say I am Trek with 2Ks, and this is my 2 Satoshis, and it's brought to you here on CBTV. One.